pleasure to introduce Jane Ferguson to give today's Friday Forum lecture. Jane is Associate Professor in the School of Culture, History and Language at the Australian National University, and she is also, for 2022, the Francis M. and Stephen H. Fuller Visiting Professor in Southeast Asian Studies at Ohio University. Her work crosses the sectors of Thailand, Myanmar, and the spaces in between. And in working how to understand how history, violence, and imagination intersect, she has written about insurgency, music, film, air traffic controllers, flight attendants, bike messengers, and much more. Her first book, Repossessing Shanland, Myanmar, Thailand, and a Nation-State Deferred, was published by the University of Wisconsin Press in 2021. If you have not read it yet, for those of you who are here at UW, the library has an electronic version, so it is easily accessible.
Oh, it's paperback this month too.
And paperback this month. I recommend it's a book you should absolutely buy. And the reason is that the book is the product of intense, committed, humble, careful fieldwork. Jane lived for 2 years in close proximity to what she calls, quote, the tiny pocket of liberated Shanland at the Thai-Myanmar border, unquote. So she lived there between 2004 and 2006, and then visited every year. The book is about the people who live in Shanland and their dreams and struggles to create a nation caught in the nets of war, bureaucracy, infighting within the movement, and all sorts of kinds of masculinity since 1958. And she gives this process the name repossessing, and the concept of repossession is brilliant. As she notes in the book, it's usually used in the US concept of goods bought on credit being seized when the buyer can no longer make the payments. The owner ceases to be the owner. She brings this analytic to thinking about nation states, and she does it into academic scholarship. This will give you a good sense of the ways in which this is a book both about devastation between Thailand and Myanmar, but it's also tremendously witty and fun to read. It makes a great holiday gift for relatives, as my relatives learned last year. Her second book, which will be published next year by the University of Hawaii Press, is entitled Silver Screens and Golden Dreams, A Social History of Burmese Cinema. And Jane uses the lens of cinema and a remarkable archive of sources that she assembled to tell another story about how art, people's lives, and nation-making intersect. And on a personal note, it makes me especially happy to introduce her because this month is the 23rd anniversary since we met in the back of a pickup truck of a missionary slash sociologist in Chiang Rai. So we are so happy to have you here. We're happy you're going to be here for the potluck, and the floor is yours.
Well, thank you. I'm really just so delighted and honored, and I really look forward to discussion, so why don't I just go straight into the presentation, and looking forward to your comments and chit-chats and interventions later. So the title, thinking about 4 of the 13 lives were stateless, can Hollywood jumpstart citizenship reform in Thailand? So this past July, acclaimed Hollywood director Ron Howard released a new film, 13 Lives. The high-budget movie dramatizes the massive 2018 rescue of the Wild Boars, the boys' soccer team that was trapped deep within Nang Non cave near Mesai in Chiang Rai Province, Thailand's far north. The movie is wonderfully enthralling. It focuses on the events largely as experienced through the travails of the international divers, played by Hollywood A-listers Colin Farrell and Viggo Mortensen, though it does include aspects of the coordinated efforts, dialogues with the boys, their families, local authorities, Thai Navy SEALs, and villagers, etc., etc. The cave dives, the set, the characters are all brilliantly executed. The narrative arc is full of suspense, tears, sacrifice, and a beautiful happy ending. It really pulls at the heartstrings. Spoiler alert, all the boys are rescued, so in case you were worried. So let's watch the trailer to get into it.
Hey Rick, you following what's happening in Thailand? Some kids stuck in a cave. We're on the list of rescue divers.
It's just a tourist cave.
It looks easy, but when it's flooded, it's impassable.
It takes a certain kind of mindset for the deep cave diving. You have to be a bit nuts.
They're very, very dangerous.
There's a high water level and a low visibility.
Barely shoulder wide, pulling against very strong currents.
Last seen 9 days ago, 12 boys and their coach are trapped in the flooded cave. Hello?
Hey, we're here. How many of you?
13.
13?
They're all alive.
Can we go out now?
ผมยืนยันได้ครับว่าเด็กๆต้องออกมาได้อย่างปลอดภัยครับ
You're talking about the 5-hour dive.
You try and dive those kids the whole way, all you can bring out is dead bodies.
With oxygen running low, the entire nation is anxiously waiting for what will happen next.
What are you thinking? Just a crazy idea. We've got a skill none of the rest of us have.
No. It's insane. It's unethical. It's illegal.
Man's already died. We'll do nothing. We'll be bringing out dead for sure. So you are expecting casualties.
Yes. I expect casualties.
John, you okay? Yeah, I'm okay. Just give me a minute. Please. Okay. We can make it.
So in 2018, I was in Chiang Mai, northern Thailand, when the story of the trapped boys hit the national news. I anxiously bit my fingernails as I followed the rescue on TV. At the height of the Cave Boys media frenzy, though, from Shan contacts, I learned that 3 of the kids, as well as the 25-year-old coach, were not Thai citizens. They or their parents were born in Shan State, Myanmar, or in the case of the coach, was second generation born in Thailand, but his citizenship had not been conferred because of the complex and costly labyrinth of Thai citizenship bureaucracy. So 4 of the trapped boys were stateless. For the rest of the world, it seems, the story of the cave rescue presents a spectacular, heartwarming triumph. People from all over the world came together to help these trapped boys. But in addition to the almost universal sympathy that the story attracts, what happens when we examine the movie and its story for what they might expose about regional geopolitics? The ongoing war and economic crisis in Myanmar and Shan State continue to push migrants and refugees across the border and into the lowest echelons of the Thai economy. This reality, coupled with the Thai government's reticence to reform its exclusionary citizenship laws, created this widespread predicament of statelessness. How much of this contextual story will a Hollywood movie portray? So, as a commercial movie, fundamentally, 13 Lives has the dual role of being both a capitalist product as well as a sophisticated form of storytelling. 13 Lives is based on recent historical events. How certain elements of those events become part of the plot to the 2-hour movie is an elaborate process, and those involved have varying degrees of agency in steering its outcome, from writers to actors to directors to set designers to editors to sound engineers to speech coaches to producers to casting directors. Let's not go on. You can watch the credits on Amazon Prime. So staying true to the story, as it were, is a matter of interpretation, as is gearing that story in all its elaboration to intended audiences. What does it mean to get the story right? Italicized, underlined. Who decides, and then what? We can consider this dilemma as a matter of optics, thinking of event framing, narrating history, and how the many disparate stories involving thousands of people are imploded and narrativized as a single discrete movie. Can the problems alluded to, even obliquely, be actioned into other kinds of discourse or even political change? So for today's talk, as you've noticed, I will be exploring Ron Howard's movie, 13 Lives, but specifically in relation to questions of culture and the political situation for stateless people in Thailand. I will present these as two contrasting stances for filmmaking's engagement with context. The first stance is one of respect and is oriented toward the cultural context, seeking accuracy and precision in representation. So I call it a stance of radical authenticity. The second stance looks towards ideals and the possibility for social change, and is one of critique of the political economy. And as such, I call this second stance a stance of radical solidarity. Each of these stances objectifies the boys, though they diverge in how they conceptualize culture. This does make a difference in how we think about the movie and what it's doing. So part one, getting it right, radical authenticity. So for starters, and at its most basic level, is any motion picture's illusion that what is happening on the screen is live. In the celluloid days, we see 24 frames per second, not as flitting still images, but as movement of a figure in those flitting images. Then, sound on film production provided audio tracks over a speaker system to give the impression that it is those characters on the screen that are doing the talking. In this sense, the spectacle, the effort towards radical authenticity, is principally a technical challenge. Building sets, animating characters to take audiences to this make-believe world, viscerally and affectively. This is the interface at which consumers are gripped by the presentation, suspend disbelief, and feel as though the events are unfolding in front of them. This suspension leads to a transcendent experience in consumption. It becomes an easier leap of the imagination to empathize with the characters. You can think about which movies have given you such a visceral, experience, even though you really know it is just illusory. So you get this chemical reaction when you're watching something that's really exciting and gripping. So for 13 Lives Technics, to make the scenes, they built replica cave sets in Queensland, Australia, and armies of consultants, including cave rescue participants themselves, shared their expertise to reconstruct the details, the mechanics of the rescue. So you can see set construction here. And making the cave also accommodate the filmmaking equipment, but still have that realistic effect for the viewer, and digital production techniques also are part of this. Again, that it's not just the divers, it's cameramen in there with us, but they're producing that illusion that we're just with the divers. So for populating those, contextual particulars included Honda Wave motorbikes, grilled pork on sticks, for those of you who are fans of Khao Niao Mu Ping, speaking of affective and visceral relations to the screen. But the specific type of temporary aluminum frame awnings used in open-air markets in Thailand, all creating the scene for the story. In an interview with Vanity Fair, director Ron Howard praised his team's concern for detailed reconstruction for the sets, saying, "The Thai actors, when they arrived, couldn't believe it. They said, 'We had no idea you foreigners would actually get it so right.'" So for populating those sets, according to an interview, director Ron Howard insisted on authentic casting and said that the film had to respect and reflect Thai culture. They hired Thai cinematographer Sayompu Muktiprom and producers Raymond Patana Wirakun and Warakon Rutai Wanichakun. Okay, surnames longer than 5 syllables, Sino-Thais. Anyway, the point is that Thais were involved in management and decision-making, not just as part of the setting. But Mesai is a cultural crossroads, a border town, an entry district for many refugees and migrants from Shan State, Myanmar. And in addition to that, we know thousands of people came together as part of the cave rescue. So Irish actor Colin Farrell, who played cave diver John Volanthen, prepared for his performance by video chatting, consulting with Volanthan himself. This was useful not only to learn about Volanthan's experiences and to ask him detailed questions about the events, but also to become acquainted with the man's personality, his mannerisms, his quirks. He's playing him on the screen. In press interviews about the production, Farrell also mentioned personal struggles making the movie, especially in doing the diving scenes. Even though he knew it was a set, he experienced claustrophobia and panic attacks while filming. As one of the central protagonists in 13 Lives, Volanthan not only had a great deal of screen time, but because he was an individual familiar to many international audiences through the news, this gave the audiences prior recognition of, okay, this is the person he's indexing, this is the person he's playing. But some individual characters end up being scrutinized more than others. And this depends on prior knowledge about them, who they are, and what they represent. So we can also consider how cultural intimacy begets cultural gatekeeping. Who's going to call out how they got it right or not? So acting out the characters, the particular, and the composite. So in 2015, after observing that no people of color were nominated for an Oscar that year, activist April Rain posted a cathartic hashtag #OscarsSoWhite, which served to galvanize a movement to pressure Hollywood to be more inclusive and diverse. A 2020 New York Times article noted that US film and TV studios have started to employ different kinds of dialect coaches to depict people of color thoughtfully and authentically. Knowing that they would be representing people from Mesai, Scouts for 13 Lives recruited numerous actors fluent in Northern Thai to play the speaking parts. Film editor John Wilcox acknowledged the challenge that this linguistic diversity presented for his own work. As he said in an interview, how am I going to get this translation right? How am I going to get the cultural aspects of this language right? How am I going to get the dialect correct? Not only are these boys from Thailand, but they're from northern Thailand, and some of them are near the Myanmar border. That dialogue is very different from that of the people who reside in Bangkok. Well, people born in Bangkok, well, there's a lot of migrants there too, but we don't need to split hairs. That's for the rest of the presentation. So his intention to be sensitive to the context of Thailand's far north, rather than the heartland, is a point well taken, even if he is glossing over its cultural complexity. So one key character in the movie is Bohom, a composite character representing a stateless child's mother. She was not an actual figure in the event, partly because film producers did not have access to study the boys' families due to narrative licensing rights and Thai government privacy restrictions. Unlike Colin Farrell, actress Patrakon Tungsupakun could not have direct access to the people she was supposed to play. However, Patrakon was praised by the filmmakers for her cultural authenticity and fluency in Gammuang, Northern Thai. So we can scrutinize together.
How 3 คนเป็นลือลูกเฮากับเป็นลือตัวบัตรประชาชนกับบ่มีผมพูดว่าเขาจะตัวลูกของเฮามาตัวกับเจ้าตัวหมู่เฮาตัวเจ้า
Okay. Well, she's afraid her boy won't be rescued. Their child from Myanmar, just over the border, stateless. ไม่ต้องกังวลเลยนะคะยังไงเราจะต้องช่วยลูกของคุณทุกคนออกมาจากถ้ำพร้อมเด็กคนอื่นแน่นอนเลยค่ะคุณแม่น่าจะภูมิใจนะคะลูกแม่น่าอดทนมากๆเลยค่ะท่านผู้ว่านี่ก็12 วันเข้าไปแล้วตั้งในห้องกับงูหนาวก็หนาวตำเข้ากับไม่ได้กินงูละอ่อนจะอดทนได้ถึงสักกี่วันแล้วเมื่อไรงูละอ่อนจะได้ออกมาตอนนี้มีหน่วยซิลทั้งหมด3 คนกำลังดูแลเด็กๆอยู่พวกเรากำลังวางแผนจะส่งอาหารเข้าไปนะคะผมเข้าใจคุณนะครับท่านจะมาเข้าใจได้จะไหนลูกของท่านเป็นคนที่กำลังจะตายกันสมาธิครับขอโทษครับ
Oh, oops. Giving away my secrets now. So to some ears, her style of speech comes off as urban Northern Thai, certainly not Shan-inflected Chiang Rai Northern Thai. First-generation Shan migrants tend to prioritize learning Central Thai before Gamuang. Central Thai is the hegemonic national language and is often the default lingua franca in the northern provinces, despite Gamuang being linguistically closer to Shan, especially Khun of Eastern Shan state. However, Central Thai is essential for interacting with agents of the Thai state. However, again, unlike Colin Farrell studying John Volanthen to play him in the movie, Patrakorn didn't have a specific persona to perform and to try to mimic. So returning to the other issue of cultural intimacy, however, if we seek and gatekeep a local accent as a measure of authenticity, we also deny the cosmopolitanness, the very multivocality of that place, or of any place of that matter, and Mesai has long been an important crossroads in upland Southeast Asia. If people rightly accuse Hollywood of whitewashing people of color from its screens, would consulting Thai filmmakers result in Thai-washing away Shan narratives? Would this be even worse if Ron Howard hadn't engaged Thai filmmakers at all? I don't have a test against that. We can ask Ron Howard, I suppose. So taking a brief intermission from 13 Lives, I thought it would be useful to bring into conversation two other Hollywood movies in which Thai government advisors and spin doctors sought to affect how Thai-ness has historically been presented on the global silver screen. So this one's interesting. Former Thai Prime Minister Kukrit Pramod played a brilliant prime minister of a fictional place called Sarkhan in the 1963 film version of John F. Kennedy's favorite book, The Ugly American. He played that part despite the film being riddled with fake Thai. For those literate in Thai, if you can explain this, what that top thing says, you'll get a donut. But Kukrit Pramod, Kukrit's Thai was majestic. The Thai speech of the Hollywood actors, including Japanese and Indian Americans, was at the other end of speech superlatives. It was filmed in Thailand, so the extras, the supposed Sarkhanese, were locals, but they wanted to make sure it maintained a veneer of fictitiousness to stay out of trouble. The 1999 remake of The King and I, called Anna and the King, starring Jodie Foster and Chow Yun-fat, ostensibly sought to be more culturally sensitive than the former 1956 musical, famously starring Yul Brynner. In a press release, Fox stated, "It is the primary goal of the studio and filmmakers to ensure the cultural and historical accuracy requested by the local government." Nevertheless, the Thai government would not allow production on Thai soil. Instead, they filmed the movie in Malaysia, and later the movie was banned in Thailand under the 1930 law, which prohibits negative portrayals of the monarchy. Another point regarding representation in Jodie Foster and Chow Yun-fat's Anna and the King is that many of the Thai-speaking parts were taken by Chinese, Malaysians, and other Asian actors who had but a few weeks to phonetically memorize their lines. So again, the accents just sound off. But leaving aside the problematic Orientalist framing of Anna and the King, regardless of your political stance about the Thai monarchy then or now, if you were a Thai actor, would you audition for a role in the film that your government would likely ban, potentially harming your own future participation in the industry, and again, for that movie? And would your authentic accent make it a better movie anyway? There is a point where one's own principles or career trajectory affect this stance of cultural authenticity, and one has limited agency to avoid involvement in the narrative in the first place. So I'm kind of two minds about this thing. So for some of this, calling out actors' inauthentic speech patterns without consideration of the political context and broader goals serves little purpose other than to reaffirm a certain species of like meta snobbery akin to denigrating the self-appointed experts who write like those restaurant reviews on Yelp, you know, like, oh, I'm from California, I know what Mexican food is, this restaurant. I'm not saying it's intrinsically bad for an actor to take on an accent either. It's an important skill of acting. So this is not a gripe about Mel Gibson's American accent. He's problematic for so many other reasons. But seeing the forest for the trees is of the broader political context. The ongoing war in Burma, the Thai failure to acknowledge Shan border crossers as refugees is more important than those fractal ethno-national traps of precise accents. But the reality on the ground in a place like Mesai is often encrypted in one way or another by the hierarchy of accents too. So the problems of statelessness in Thailand are compounded by linguistic differences, especially for those who do not speak fluent Central Thai, let alone Northern Thai. And accents are an important part of ethno-national gatekeeping in Thailand, and accordingly, according to one study of 51 stateless people, mostly Aka or Lahu, they felt that those who speak Thai fluently experience less stigma than those who do not, and some even rehearse Central Thai accents in anticipation of going to government offices. Like my own ethnography amongst Shan migrants echoes these findings as well. However, if in the movie, if all characters are portrayed with an accurate melange of interplaying languages and accents present in Mesai, that might tick an authentic box to some ears, but what about the problem of legal statelessness? It seems myopic to go deeply local without looking around. Classic sociologist C. Wright Mills might call this abstracted empiricism. As mentioned earlier, the accent is something that is privileged, scrutinized, and shamed in Thailand. No place is immune to this, really. And the fact of the matter is that the Thai military government and Hollywood alike get a convenient pass, you know, if this is like close enough to making Mesai sets look terrific, while millions of stateless people struggle to survive in Thailand. The fame of a labyrinthine cave rescue is not going to change that unless those political points are acted upon by a broader social movement. Unless you think the Thai government will change its policy out of benevolence. So part 2, getting it right, radical solidarity. Shifting from set design and actors' presentation of the people and their accents, the idea of radical authenticity, to the political questions that the story could raise, to consider a broader structural critique of Thailand's citizenship laws, or what about the fact that this story took place in the context of a military dictatorship? The everyday struggles of stateless people in Thailand pervade the country. At the individual level, people are not only unable to avail themselves of services of the state, such as healthcare or schools, but even when there is provision for stateless people, they are often reticent to do so because of their precarious legal status or fear of prohibitive cost. In the country, from registration data, there are nearly 500,000 stateless people, but the actual number is likely between 2 or 3 million. They are the second largest stateless populations in Southeast Asia, with Myanmar having the largest. So today, the estimated ethnic Shan migrant population in Thailand is about 1 million people. And this is further confounding as Thailand will not recognize Shan migrants as potential refugees for the UNHCR to facilitate resettlement. Thailand is not signatory to the 1951 Convention on Refugees, nor the 1954 Convention relating to the status of stateless persons, and as a result, statelessness is not defined in Thai law. It was the 1956 civil registration which sought to document citizens, but those in the periphery were overlooked out of convenience, bigotry, economic interest, or a perfect storm, a combination of those 3 reasons. Another related explanation for the lack of systematic policy is Thailand's frequent regime changes. Whoever in power will leave it for the next regime to deal with, rather than stir what many see as a controversial hornet's nest. Oh, this is the guy who plays Prayut in 13 Lives. One of the people I watched with it said that, oh yeah, he's much more handsome than the real Prayut. Okay. So just a couple months before the 2018 cave rescue in Thailand, in Paris, a short video of the heroics of Mamadou Gassama, a 22-year-old migrant from Mali, went viral on social media. So I think a lot of people still, saw this guy climb up and rescue that dangling toddler. So the athletic young man made a death-defying climb up to a 5th-floor apartment balcony to save the life of a toddler, a real-life Spider-Man. President Emmanuel Macron met Gassama in a press conference, announced, in recognition of his heroic act, I was tempted to do a French accent, I'll say that. In recognition of his heroic act, he would have papers in order as quickly as possible. However, when activists pushed Macron regarding French citizenship laws and the everyday difficulties faced by migrants and refugees, the president responded, "An exceptional act does not make it policy." So Macron could have been referring to just about any political regime. Recalling Giorgio Agamben's theory regarding the ability to make exception is what defines the sovereign. But when one attracts exceptional attention for heroics and potentially reveals a fissure in the state apparatus, the state swoops in and regards the hero rather than fixing its fissures. But had the amazing Spider-Man's act not been captured on a smartphone, or had Gassama dropped the child 5 stories onto the concrete below, would his bid for French citizenship simultaneously have fallen flat? Had the boys not been rescued and then invited to media appearances all over the world, their issue of statelessness would be dead in the water in more ways than one. The Thai government made an exception and granted the 4 stateless footballers Thai citizenship in haste, so they could travel to Los Angeles to appear on The Ellen Show, among other international media appearances. So as we see, everyday oppressive laws are only made embarrassing to the nation when a non-citizen becomes famous for doing something unilaterally heroic or good. Everyday statelessness is one of the Thai government's various dirty secrets, fueled by desperation of workers and refugees fleeing conflict in neighboring Myanmar. Hollywood, in the case of Ron Howard's movie, touches on this issue very briefly, but handles it with kid gloves. Without signposts or belaboring those political points, their regionality ends up being lost in the chaff of the Hollywood story and various nods to local suffering and to Thai heroism. I found this interview clip of actor Colin Farrell talking about this movie, so we can think about how he describes the issues.
I've loved Ron's work since I was a kid, going back to Splash and Cocoon, which I just showed my 12-year-old last week. He's sneaky, Ron. His films are so full of heart, whether they're pieces of fiction, dramatizations of memories, like Parenthood. I think Parenthood is just one of the great American films. And so to do this, and to do a story that was as beautiful as this, and was about so much of the best of human beings, so much of how we are capable of really living the most beautiful lives that we can live if we were just taking a moment to be considerate and respect our differences, while also kind of appraising and acknowledging and stepping into the things that make us the same. In this case, our care for children, the future of our civilization, the future of our world, whether they're Thai children or British children or Irish children or American. And I think that was the thing that brought the world together as well, was that it was so clear. It was so clear that the 13 people that were trapped in the cave were innocents. It was so clear that they were all innocent, that the only thing they were victims of was a bad decision and an early monsoon season arriving. So to work with Ron on this, I mean, look, he's a documentarian as well. you know, so for him to come on board and tell this story, which was always going to have kind of an, you know, a narrative construct, of course, but he wanted to make it as cinema verite as he could and get in there, and he was always on the set, moving around, looking for the angles and looking for how to get to the centre of the story he was telling. He's just extraordinarily decent as well, and fair, and is interested in everyone and wanted to make sure that everyone was respected and everyone had their moment. He doesn't believe in the star system or status or any of that shit. The set was an incredibly egalitarian environment, and that was Gord, I'm a big fan of that stuff, so that was cool to be around.
Yeah, so he doesn't believe in the star system, says Hollywood A-lister Colin Farrell. But anyway, to conclude, for some concluding thoughts, I return to my question at the beginning. Can Hollywood jumpstart citizenship reform in Thailand? Am I barking up the wrong tree when I ask about the stateless? Is Colin Farrell just doing his job to promote the movie to, you know, who was ever watching? Still, more questions need to be asked, and these are being done by everyday activists in Thailand and advocates for stateless people's rights. For an industry like Hollywood, something like cultural authenticity in Mesai is more akin to a technical problem than a political one. Of course, politics are involved at every step, but they can suggest a technical solution and they won't have an existential crisis over it. In approaches to culture, the differences between stances of radical authenticity and radical solidarity for movie making, the former treats culture as a technical issue. You can go to it, you can learn about it, you can respect it, you can reflect on it as you incorporate it as part of the narrative. Similarly, in aviation management and engineering, which looks at what it calls human factors, is an adaptation of the technical interface to local cultural nuance and ways of seeing. The mechanical apparatus, however, largely remains in and serves the interests of the powerful. Turning to ideas about culture from a stance of radical solidarity, this not only questions the reason for and why a group's culture has largely been excluded, it also lets them collaborate to build their own apparatus to tell their story as they see fit. In the stance of radical solidarity, culture incorporates but is not reducible to technical factors or things that can be studied to be replicated precisely and accurately, but looks towards social transformation and ways that imagine how society could be different. In other words, radical authenticity sees culture for what it is and responds to it as such, but radical solidarity includes the broader context to listen and imagine what it could be as well. So Ron Howard went to considerable lengths to present contextual accuracy, radical authenticity, in the making of the movie. In an earlier interview about the movie, regarding why he chose to make the story into a narrative fiction story rather than a documentary, he noted that the dramatization is intrinsically better at capturing the suspense, the feelings of the characters in the moment, than a documentary made after the fact. So as Burmese author and film theorist Dagon Mimi Kim had pointed out, since the early days, people go to the movies in order to get the feelings transmitted by them. So part of what makes dramatic stories so powerful for audience members is their capacity for aesthetic identification. Not just being absorbed in the story itself, but filling the gaps of the narrative with feelings or details from one's own life. Feeling afraid in the cave, anguishing, not knowing whether your child is safe, delighting in a SpongeBob birthday cake. Well, maybe not that one. Anyway, suspending pessimism, or what has been called in studies about race, glib deconstructionism, reflecting on the actual story, we can see that the hegemony of Prayut is not absolute. There was care, empathy, and volunteerism at the local level and within bureaucracy to effect an unprecedented rescue. There is a possibility for humans to come together to do amazing things. It's a wonderful and enthralling story, a magnificent tale that really happened. Author James Baldwin once referred to pop culture as the sunlit playpen in which so many Americans lose first their identities and then their minds. So intrinsically then, if we're doing social science or anthropology, et cetera, it merits our attention if we want to analyze contemporary society. But as a rejoinder, Baldwin himself noted that mass culture is not just a mere reflection of our chaos, that very chaos contains life and therefore tremendous energy for change. So thank you, that's my presentation. I look forward to your questions.